Hello. Well, I hope you've had a reasonable last few hours. I have, thankfully, and I've had a few requests, of course, for offering healing prayers, and we can do that, of course, all of us together. They do seem to work. You know, one of the things that I find fascinating about what we do, meeting like this, is because all those thousands of years ago, this was what people did. They would meet each other, they would speak with each other, and they would talk about different things together. Very few people ever wrote anything down, even when the alphabet was known. And certainly if people wrote things down, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to read. And this held true really until perhaps only a few years ago, relatively, maybe half a century. The majority of people really couldn't read, and books were still quite difficult to get hold of in many places and were quite expensive. But all those thousands of years ago, when books like the Bible came to be written down, this was a rare occurrence that things were written down. Mostly people did what we're doing, which they would meet, they would talk together, and if there was something of interest or something unusual, something really magical, they would pass that information around between each other. And then of course you get people who could write and would have the means, and they would write down the stories and various things that they could. And this is how the Bible, for instance, came into being, and certainly how the New Testament came into being. People heard about things, they talked about things, and somebody then wrote their version down. So I often get asked how we know things are true when they're hundreds and thousands of years old. Well, the quick answer is we don't know, but there have been scholars who have looked into those ancient writings and have been able to verify at least quite a portion of them. And especially in the last 100 years, when we've had archaeological digs going on and artefacts have been unearthed, and things with names inscribed upon them that we have read about, to actually make us think, well, there's quite a bit of truth there. Of course, the opinions of people, which is what we also read, may diverge from ours, and there may be very, very ancient ideas of how society should be, how people should perform within society, and a system of punishment and reward, aka justice for wrongdoing, and so on and so forth, gets written down. And really, although some of it, of course, the basics are good, a lot of it is something that in our modern understandings we reject. Similarly, of course, there are stories of miracles and wonderful events of healing and people appearing out of nowhere, people being apparently in several places at once, manifestations of physical phenomena and psychic phenomena that as spiritualists we recognise and understand today. And yet all these things were going on ever since time began, and some of them were written down. The healing part, of course, I'm always very interested in myself, and I'm sure you are too. And this is the basis of the healing that we do, which is our understanding that there is a world of spirit which is interpenetrating of ours, which is so close to ours that we can ask for help, and we also understand that we can receive that help. And there are miracles going on every day, and sometimes you might say that even everyday things that we take for granted now is a miracle. to be able to take something that alleviates pain is a miracle, because not that long ago there was nothing like it. So even people who suffered terrible pain and injury didn't have anything to give them to help that pain. And in fact, I can remember, oh dear, here we go, there was sort of like about one pill for everything when I was a child, called M&B, and whatever you had wrong with you, you got one of those. So, it's not so long ago that there wasn't very much for people to alleviate their suffering and their pain. So in fact, if you think about that, for thousands of years, people have relied on supernormal, if you like, influences to help them through their pain and suffering. And we still do that, and we still we rely on that as an extra. We're lucky. We can say, well, it's an option for us, although there are occasions when even modern medicine and science don't seem to be able to help, or they don't offer a solution for somebody's problems. That's where praying and asking for healing comes into its own. And we know that when we pray for help for people, what happens is we may not be aware of it, but things can happen to us that actually put us in the way of being helped, of being perhaps cured from something or healed of something that we otherwise may not have known about. For instance, I know that Claire Marie won't mind if I mention that, all the healing that was sent out, and she's a prayerful person in herself. She had what seemed to be the most horrific accident, and yet she wasn't over hurt by that. They found, when they looked to see what injuries she may have, they found things that would have possibly killed her if they had not been found, because she'd had an accident and had to have a scan and an x-ray. So you see, she has been helped through that healing process, praying, when none of us really knew what we were asking for. And I suppose in a way we don't know what the outcome's going to be, but if we trust that it will be all right, then that's a good thing. All that psychic and physical, spiritual phenomena that we read about in all these ancient texts and so on, they're still going on today, and that's the wonderful thing. It may be hidden in a welter of modern science and all sorts of other stuff, but the fact is that what we do still works. It still works. And I think that's a marvellous thing. And I also think it's really nice that we can meet like this, just like they used to do. And you don't have to go to a church to pray. You don't have to go to a temple to pray. In the old days, there weren't any such thing. People would meet and would pray together and would ask together for help. And they would get it just the same as if they had walked a mile to a cathedral. Okay, so there is such a thing as building up energy, and spiritual energy too, in a particularly confined space, however small or large that is. We understand that through our spiritualist science. Nevertheless, wherever we are, we can receive that energy, that healing, and we can just know that that's going to be all right. St. Paul actually talked about our bodies being the temples of our spirit, and if you like, he was actually saying to everybody, each person is a church, each person is a temple. Within that temple, which is our body, our spirit can pray and ask. So, and we're a temple like no other of bricks and mortar. We are flesh and blood and bone. So there you are. I always wonder, really, what I might interest you in and hold your interest. And hopefully a few of the words I've said might have sent you to various texts to have a read and see what actually is said in the light of our own understanding, because the biblical stories, some of them are full of mediumship and full of healing and full of prophecy. And there are people who divined dreams, could actually tell people what their dreams meant. There are people who could summon the spirits of the dead, and that's talked about. What's also talked about, of course, in one lot of writings is that you shouldn't have anything to do with that. You should not speak to the spirits of the dead, and you shouldn't have anything to do with sorcery or magic or divination, and heaven knows what would happen to you if you did. But the fact is that it's like the old Fraudulent Mediums Act that we now don't have. That if you say something is wrong, then you must admit that there is a right to it. So if something's fraudulent, if you say, well, somebody must be a fraudulent medium, you're actually saying that there are mediums who are genuine. And similarly, if you say that we don't want anybody to talk to the spirits of the dead, or to be mediums or sorcerers or have anything to do with magic, you're actually admitting that there is such a thing. So, Yabu and sucks. So here we are. And the other thing, of course, is when witches were being burnt all over Europe and here in England, they used to bury their bodies at a crossroads, so that if their spirits came up, they wouldn't know which way to go. I mean, really, and there are so many who would have just gone to spirit and would certainly have known where to go. And the fact that they actually realised that people would come back, I'm glad that frightened them, to be quite honest. And I hope they were always frightened, and hopefully haunted a bit as well. Now, isn't that mean of me? So, I can see there's lots of people watching, and I'd like to say hello to everybody. I did try and see whether I could change the settings on my my phone so that people's names would actually stay instead of sort of rolling off. And I can see Ricky, I can see Kathy, I can see Sue, Linda, and and Janice. It says about bringing you all on camera, but I don't suppose you'd like to be brought on camera either, because not everybody wants to be seen. Talking about which, we were going back to what I was talking about, how everybody used to meet together and talk and tell each other stories, and especially ones about miraculous kinds of healing, and if they'd seen anything particularly amazing, or if they'd heard of anybody divining dreams or doing magical things. And all this got written down eventually. And somebody wrote to me and said, how do I know what's true and what isn't? Well, I say that have a look. See what seems reasonable to you. And in the light of our spiritualist knowledge about mediumship and about healing, about all the phenomena that's associated with spiritualism, manifestations of spirit individuals, knockings and rappings and all sorts of interesting things, and read it, and the stuff that you understand about, accept, and the stuff that you don't like the sound of or you would take issue with, dismiss it, because you can actually decide for yourself what you will accept and what you won't. Just in the same way that if somebody speaks to you about something, you can dismiss it as a load of old codswallop, or there may be something in it that you find reasonable and of use to you. So there you are, you see. And Brian, I'd like to say hello to Brian, because Brian was the minister at my dear Auntie Esther's funeral. I was so surprised to see a spiritualist minister taking her funeral. I shouldn't have been, because my cousin, her eldest son, is a spiritualist and lives up where Brian and his wife live. My auntie, her birthday would have been 2 days ago, Brian, by the way. My Auntie Esther, whose funeral you took. Thank you for that, again, of course. and I'm sure that she's having a look in as we speak, because I do believe that those we love and think we have lost, well, we've lost to the physical, are able to be around us and look in at special times. Times like this, I'm a medium. I'm glad to be a medium. This means that I do have contact and communication with the spirits of dead people. And don't mention the animals, because that too. But, you know, the fact is that when somebody like me starts to speak and warble on, we have a light inside all of us, if you like, and the light starts to shine a bit brighter, and it's like a little beacon that goes up, and I always say up and down, you know, why not? It goes out, and those we love who are in the world of spirit can see that light, and they see that light shining bright, so they will come closer to that in case it's going to be one of those communication times, which in a way it is and in a way it isn't, because I'm not going to sit here and start delivering messages from individuals in spirit to people out there, but I am giving a sort of, if you like, a collective message from my helpers, because otherwise I would not be able to sit and chat to you as I do. I have to refer back all the time to see if what I'm saying is of use to anybody out there. I don't know what's of use, they do, so there you go. And I can see that lots of people's names, and I hope that everybody's finding it quite interesting. Somebody very nicely said to me it was like being invited into my little home and sort of almost like having a cup of tea with me. I wish that you could all have a cup of tea with me, but we'll have to have a psychic cup of tea and be doing with that. Sometimes, you know, a thought is father and mother to the deed. So while I would wish that I was making you a cup of tea, maybe you will be making yourself a cup of tea, and in that way we'll share it. Ricky Martin, why do we say we talk to dead people? Those in the spirit world are fully alive and only a thought away. Yes, that's quite a nice thing to say, but the fact is that when we talk about people being dead here, we talk about being dead to the physical, and not that we're not able to talk to their dead bodies. And we know, those of us who are understanding of this, understand that we are spirit within our bodies, our physical bodies, that when we die, when our physical bodies die, our spirit personality, our spirit individuality that has been clothed in that physical body is released and goes and lives on in the world of spirit. And yes, they are alive, but not in the physical sense. So when we talk about dead and dying, this is a matter of semantics, and it's what we understand. And sometimes, you know, spiritualists have been accused of being a little bit airy-fairy, and perhaps denying that there's such a thing as physical death, because we say that there is no death. There is life after this life, and we talk about passing over or passing away or passing to spirit. The Salvation Army talks about it being a promotion, and why not? And in the hope of glory to come. But nevertheless, Ricky, I say we don't have to say we talk to dead people. I say it. Other people don't say that. It's only me. And I think that it's just a commonly held supposition that people who die or are dead pass over, and I talk to them. I mean dead to the physical, obviously. And in actual fact, they are living on in a different dimension and in a different spirit clothing. Because there we get into how we recognise each other when we do go to spirit. And we know that there is an etheric double that we have. And if you're lucky and you do develop your mediumistic abilities and your psychic vision, you're able to see that etheric double as a sort of a shimmering body which is similar to one's own, and it's this etheric body by which we would automatically recognise people that come back through those channels to show themselves to us as they were when they were here. They utilise that etheric self. So I hope that has helped you to know why I say that I talk to dead people. Yeah, that's just me. And Sheila and Gibb-de, yes, hi, and Phil Smith, hi. If anybody else has got a question they'd like to ask me, they're very welcome before we get into the prayers. But I know that there are quite a few people who need our prayers tonight, and I would like to perhaps get on with that. You remember the last time I tried that one with my hands, because when we give healing, of course, we give healing through our hands, and we give that from spirit through our spirit, utilising our physical body, which is still alive down here, to pass that healing emanation through, and it goes out to those who are in a direct line with that. And of course we can give distant healing just by sitting and sending out our thoughts, and that works as well. But sometimes it's interesting to actually get that extra zoom by feeling that you are close to the person who is giving that healing to you. And I know that at this time I've been asked that we should all ask for healing for Helen Rose and her son Joseph, who has had a birthday altar, and also for Leslie Phillips, who is suffering from knee pain, and we know how debilitating that is. So perhaps without more ado, we'll close our eyes together, send out our thoughts for healing. Dear Lord, we ask at this time for healing for Helen Rose and her son Joseph, and also for Leslie Phillips. We also ask, dear Lord, for all those who are here watching and meeting with us tonight, and we ask that they be relieved of all their pain and suffering, for easement of their sufferings, whatever the problems they have in life. We know that there is somebody there who is suffering terribly from back pain. I'm being told that someone is suffering with what they used to call tennis elbow, and that is very painful. We know that someone is also suffering with pain in their feet, and we know also, dear Lord, that someone is hoping for the best. They've been told that they can have an operation, and they're hoping that it will turn out well. Dear Lord, we ask you to look after everybody who is sick and suffering this night. And we ask, dear Lord, everything in the name of love and truth and light. Amen. There. Well, I hope that you feel a little bit better now after that. If you have any other kinds of questions for me, do write on the comment thread or ask me now, and I'll be happy to answer them. Mostly people want to know whether their loved ones are happy after they've passed over to the next world, and I can absolutely assure you that when ordinary people who've led ordinary, good, decent lives, best they can, pass over to the world of spirit, they get a wonderful reception from their own loved ones who are there to greet them, and they are given wonderful blessings of everything that they'd ever wished for. And that's the truth, I can tell you. Oh, Ricky, that's all right. You know, somebody who has had a lot of suffering before they've passed over, they may rest a little once they've gone over, but the fact is that they will be delighted with the freedom from pain, the freedom from suffering, and especially if you've got really old, you are restored to vigour. You feel young. You feel as you did. I know this to be true. I was in a hospital. There you are, I'll tell you quickly. I was in a hospital waiting to have a scan myself. I didn't know why I had to wait all day. What had happened was they'd lost some of my notes and things, and they left me sitting in a cubicle, and next to me was a lady who was lying. I saw her lying down, a quite elderly woman. I wasn't old at the time. And she was lying there, and there I was sitting there and getting really cheesed off and wondering why I'd had to be waiting for hours. And then I suddenly was aware that this lady next door, this young woman, sat up. I kid you not. This young woman sat up. There, you can imagine this old lady's body laying there. This young woman sat up and got out of the bed. This body was still laying there. This lady was still laying there. And she got up and she looked wonderful. She had lovely brown hair, shoulder-length hair, lovely dress, and she whirled her. My guide and helper, Doris, said to me, "Tell her to get back. Tell her she's got to go back. She's got to get back in her body." And I said, "I can't tell her that." She said she's got to get back because her children are coming to see her and they would be devastated if she's not there. So I thought, how do I do this? So Doris said, "Just tell her." So I just, in my mind, I said to this woman, "Please, you must get back into your body because your children are coming to see you and they will be upset." And she went like this and got back, and I saw her sit on the body, go back into this lady. The crash bell went, and suddenly all the crash team were there and working on this woman, and I saw her revive. I saw her eyes open, and she looked at me, and then they pulled the curtains round, and they took her off up to a ward. Well, about half an hour later, I could hear the two people came to the desk, and I heard them ask for Mrs. Smith. "Can you tell us where Mrs. Smith is, please?" And they said, "Oh, yes, your mum's been taken up to a ward." And it was her children. They had come. They were grown up, of course. A woman and a man had come along to see their ma, and there she'd been taken to a ward. She was still alive. So there you are. I know that these things happen. I know that these things happen, and nobody will budge me from that. So there you see. And I didn't know why I was stuck sitting there. And then when they came back, they'd found my scans and everything, and they sent me off home. They said they couldn't really find anything wrong with me. My eldest son always says, "Well, you know, if I have a brain scan, they should look at my toe." And as for there not being anything there, he's not surprised at that either. But there you go. So I hope that has made you feel a little bit more upbeat about whatever's going on in your life, to know that those who love us, who we feel that we've lost, and the older you get, the more people you lose. I don't know how old you have to be to feel like an orphan, but, you know, a lot of us who get older, we don't have our parents anymore. We certainly don't have our grandparents, which reminds me of that medium who was doing a demo in front of a Derby and Joan club, as they used to be called. And there's all these grey hairs sitting in the audience, and he said, "I've got somebody's grandma here, can anybody take her?" Well, I saw that happen once actually in the sanctuary at Stansted Hall. This lovely young man came out, and when he said that, I nearly fell off my chair laughing, but I tried to keep a straight face. And I asked Doris, I said, "Can you help him out here?" Because he was obviously genuine and he did have somebody's grandma there, but he wasn't doing too well. And then she got in amongst it, And he started to talk about this grandma and identify her, what she looked like, all the rest of it. And somebody said yes. And it was a good piece of evidence then that started to come through. So you see, it's all very true. I wouldn't sit here and tell you a load of rubbish. I really wouldn't. And I hope that you have a good night or a good day or a good morning, depending on where you live in the world. And of course there's me sitting here praying for a freeze, not only praying for a freeze but also praying that somebody, you know, some sort of millionaire is going to come along and help us build a big ice stadium here. Well, I have faith, I trust our friends over there. I'm sure that something good will happen. And there you are. So perhaps we shouldn't pray for very cold weather because some people won't like it, but I'm not that good, you see. I'm still a bit selfish on that one. So I say God bless to you, to everybody who's been meeting with me tonight. The advantage I have on those people who could only speak and have their words quoted or misquoted after the event, sometimes many years after the event, I have the advantage that if you want to know what I've said or if you want to tell somebody else what I've said, you can just play it again. So we do have an advantage like that. I hope that you stay well, be well, recover yourself if you are not well, and all will be well. All will be well, and all will be well for your friends and relations who are on the other side of life right now and will still be caring and loving you, even if you're not aware of that. It is the truth. So I say God bless you, and I will speak to you again soon, meet you again soon. Bye for now. Bye. Oh, and I should mention there are a couple of websites with more stuff on. My own, which is www.lyngestiswalk.com, and our New Christian Spiritualist Society.com, which also has some interesting stuff. And if you're into skating, speed skating and so on, there's the www.littlepoolicestadiumproject.com you might like to look at. And if you like bandy, which is a wonderful sport, we're hoping to re-establish it here in the UK. We have a website for that, which is www.gbbandyfederation.uk. There. So I think I've said everything I have to say there. So I say God bless you.